Folks, we are going to talk about the most important real estate metric that no one talks about. In order to do that, I'm going to bring on Lance Lambert, Fortune editor, all things real estate. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Housing. Always a lot going on.
Yeah, again, I've been studying housing for 22 plus years, buying and selling. I have an econ degree, so I'm very, very comfortable with numbers and metrics. But you put a post on Twitter, so please tell people what your Twitter handle is yesterday that I thought was the most important housing statistic that no one talks about. So, what is the Twitter page and what is it?
Yeah, so my Twitter page is at News Lambert, and the data point is inventory.
Very
And
cool. Why don't you show what I saw? And I'm like, dude, this is what we have to talk about tomorrow.
yeah, so let me sharing the screen now. Here we go. So right here is a map of the United States. And it's about to go up on fortune.com today. Today's what is it? The 22nd, 23rd? I forget. I think it's 22nd.
22nd. Yep.
Yeah, so it'll be up later today on fortune.com. But this shows inventory change, active listings on realtor.com over the past 3 years. So every market that is red is under pre-pandemic levels. Anywhere that is dark red is 50% below pre-pandemic levels. And right now we're at around just a little under half of the markets in the country are 50% below pre-pandemic inventory levels.
Yeah,
And then you get
this is there's so much in this one picture. I just want to make sure people appreciate what this is. First off, the compare is pre-pandemic, meaning November 2019. That market was, if you don't remember, still a seller's market, meaning the sellers had the upper hand. And what we're now doing is fast forwarding to November of 2022, 3 years later, and half the country has half the listings. I'm going to go from memory here. I think 46, no, 36, maybe it was 46. 46 of the 400 largest metros are over, so less than 10% or thereabouts. And I mean, there's in total, we're down 34%. I got all of this from your Twitter page yesterday. It was amazing.
Yeah, so we're still down 34% from pre-pandemic. At the height back in April, it was down 62. So still below the levels from pre-pandemic that, like you said, were late in that cycle and were fairly tight. Now, what we do see here are the blue markets that have not only went to pre-pandemic levels, but the dark blue, especially the Idahos and just under Denver, have really soared back above pre-pandemic levels. So I think the map does a really good job of showing the story of the past 6 months, which is inventory is still fairly tight, and you can kind of see where things have gone into more of that bust type mode or steeper.
Well, I think this map does a couple of things for me. One is, you've heard me talk about, I don't think there's a national housing crash, but there are definitely metros in trouble, i.e. dark blue in trouble. I think when we look back at this in 5 years, what we're going to find is any market where iBuyers were dominant went up an extra 15% and then crashed. Also, what we're going to find is markets that had very small populations, comparatively speaking, that became Zoom towns, right, where people moved to, also had problems. But again, that's not the country.
Yeah, now we are starting to see some more pockets of things. Like you look in Nashville, which is kind of going now, and Clarksville and Huntsville. It's kind of interesting to see this pocket. And actually, on the East Coast, Moody's for the past 6 months has been the most bearish on Clarksville. So it's interesting to see them kind of pop up now. I think they had a lot of kind of the second home type buyers. So still kind of that Zoom town element. Now let's take a look at just the past 12 months. So past 3 years, we're still fairly tight, but we have seen a move up in inventory. We have seen inventory move up 47% year over year. But here's the fascinating thing. And this is why inventory is such a great metric, is that it's not just a supply metric, it's also a metric of demand. So right now, year over year, new listings are down 17%.
Yeah.
The number of listings going on the market last November was almost 400,000, and now it's 327,000. Mm-hmm. But total active listings right now are 750,000 versus 500,000 last November. So the inventory is growing, not because more sellers are rushing into the market. It's actually fewer sellers. They don't want to give up those 2-3% rates. Exactly. But demand has pulled back so sharply that homes are sitting longer.
Yeah, what I'm telling folks, Lance, to focus on is days on market. Right. We saw, again, according to National Association of Realtors, national days on market went from 18 to 24. We saw that yesterday. That's the statistic that will eventually go over 40 and maybe even 50 days, because we've crushed supply and we've crushed demand. And the pool of buyers and the total pool of transactions is just going down, right? I think we're at 4.09 in November existing home sales. I think we're pretty close to the bottom. Right. I think maybe we go to 3.9, 3.8, something like that, but we're a lot closer to the bottom on transactions than we were a couple of months ago.
And so this is the past just 12 months. You can see it's pretty much been the story that people know, which is things have softened much faster out west and south. Those are the parts of the country that boom the most. And really the dark blue is because inventory was just so freaking low in those markets that the fever breaking just finally allowed some inventory to build up. Now in the Austins of the world and, the Salt Lake Cities and Boise's, it's been more than that, of course. But this is showing the fever broke.
Comparing November 22 to November 21 is almost unfair. If you don't remember where rates were in November 21, we were still low threes. And now they're, this November, they're, high sixes or whatever. So, definitely the fever broke. I think that is a great use of words.
And of these 400 markets, 364 are still below pre-pandemic levels. All of this is going to be on Fortune by the end of today. And so you can go on here, you can select your market. And
let's look at Fresno, California. We know somebody who invests there.
Fresno.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. Okay. So definitely in a different spot than it was last November, about double. Yep. But the inventory climb was this summer. Mm-hmm. And since it's flattened out.
And this is what I'm seeing in a lot of areas. And again, I have a bet with, I think it's John Wake in Arizona, that Phoenix inventory back in, I don't know, while the inventory was building, John was telling me that inventory is going to explode into the year. And I'm like, I don't think so. So we have a gentleman's bet of $1 that inventory was going to fall. So Phoenix, PH, I guess.
Where are we at? I need to go higher.
Oh, what is Phoenix called?
Wait, am I missing it?
No, I think they go by
No. I separated it by under and above. So these are the ones that are back to pre-pandemic. So Phoenix is in this one.
Yep.
So Phoenix is, below what it was in October, but I don't know. We'll see what December looks like. But it's not accelerating inventory growth.
And this is to your point, active listings are going down.
No, total active listings are, in November, total active listings did go down. But year over year, total active listings inventory is up nationally 47%. But new listings, the new stuff going on to the market each month, is down year over year about 17%.
And again, that's the whole, you've heard me say this a lot, right? The Fed broke housing. And that's the reason why people are stuck.
Now, what's interesting are still Texas and some of the southern states markets. Mm-hmm. Let me get Dallas pulled up. Okay. And so they were slower to move up. Out west, inventory really took off in the summer. And yes, Dallas and some of these southern places did move up in the summer, but it was later and slower behind those other markets. So I'm thinking what I'm seeing here, which is still the markets like Tampa, Jacksonville, Nashville, Dallas, they're all still moving up. Houston. I think they're just 3 months behind in terms of their inventory slope, right? The California and the West really slowed down and kind of stagnated with the growth a few months ago. And now I think they're still they're reaching their slowdown period now with the growth. Now, when it comes to the spring, inventory should be growing.
Yeah. That's the theory anyway, right? Yeah, this will be interesting, and you can't really tell this, but I'm gonna put this out there because you're a numbers guy and you may be able to look for this. I spoke with a couple of agents in the last week. In fairness, they're in California and Washington, so very much West Coast.
Yeah.
Both of them thought that 30% of their active inventory is not really active, and I had them tell me what that means. Basically, what happened is people put their properties on the market with wish pricing, and they're not willing to budge. So those will eventually become expireds or canceled listings, right? Because they're not going to get their wish pricing. So it's interesting because, again, days on market are going to explode higher. Part of the reason is you're going to have people that have listings but really have no interest in selling at what now is a new market price.
Yeah, well, it's either this market is going to be very frozen for a long time, or sellers are going to capitulate a bit and give some easing, and if financial conditions ease up, and the market can kind of get moving. Otherwise, it's grinded to a halt right now.
I agree with you 1,000%. I think those are the two options. Does something happen nationally that causes sellers to not only list but then adjust to market, i.e. lower prices? Or do we just grind this out for 3 or 4 years at some 4 million transactions? And my thoughts currently are the latter than the former, but we'll see soon.
And if you make your money on transactions, I think your hope is that prices fall.
No, absolutely. If you're an agent, broker, inspector, title company, you're hoping for big recession. You're hoping for transactions. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and then also recession ease up on the mortgage rates.
Correct.
And so here is I've charted Moody's overvalued percentage and then 1 year inventory change the past 12 months. And of course, overvalued is relative to its historic norm, right? So something could be overvalued technically for decades, right? And it could just kind of build a new norm. So don't always panic when you see 40%, 30% overvalued. Although once you're kind of 50, we've seen this cycle, those types of markets, the Austins overvalued, 61%. We've seen them, attract more.
And again, all this is going to be on fortune.com today?
Everything. Yep. And all of it's interactive. So any market you find here, it'll tell you how much the inventory is up over the past 12 months, the overvalued percentage for Moody's, all of this, all the data points, all interactive, as long as it works. Because I've put so much data into this story, there's a chance the page might not load.
And again, it's the top 400 markets.
Top 400 markets, yeah.
That's so amazing you did that.
But this one's markets. Now, I did want to read you some commentary from some different places on inventory. This is going to be from Morgan Stanley. And so Morgan Stanley was initially one of the places that was like, okay, we don't really think prices are going to drop. And then they kind of were like, okay, maybe 5%. Now they're kind of like, okay, 10% with 4 of that next year. And they actually think half of the cut has already happened the end of this year. So let's take a look at what they had to say. Okay, so here's Morgan Stanley. Supply conditions historically argue for climbing home prices from here on out. If we are below 6 months of total supply, annual home price growth has never turned negative within the next 6 months, going back to the beginning of this Case-Shiller index in the late 80s. We currently sit at 3.9 months of supply. So anytime that supply has been under 6 months, which we are right now, we're at 3.9, we have never seen home prices go negative, is what they're saying.
Nationally speaking.
Nationally speaking. But we expect home prices to start falling on an annual basis in March 2023, meaning that year over year catches up by 2023, despite tight inventory, reflects how unprecedented this affordability situation is in the United States. And so they're a 10% peak to trough, and they believe that half of that has already occurred by the end of December, and that 2023 home price appreciate, or 2022, the year we're in right now, that appreciation is going to come all the way down to 4%. So we're at 9% through the first half of the year, and then it comes down to 4%.
Okay.
But they do believe that inventory is going to prevent a crash, essentially, is their theory. Although supply does not keep home price growth floored at 0, we do believe it prevents home price declines from becoming too large. So this is, in their view, the floor.
Yeah. And again, this has kind of been my experience going through the crisis. Again, as I open this video, it's all about inventory to me. If there is some wave of inventory because of layoffs, because of forbearance, because of silver tsunami, or whatever excuse you want to make, if that actually ever happened, we could have significant price drops. But if the inventory doesn't show up, it doesn't happen. It'll just be a frozen market for a couple of years.
Yeah. So their view with this 10% peak to trough is that it takes us back to October 2021, which really feels like a day.
Yeah, that's not so bad. October 21, that wasn't horrible.
Yeah. So you kind of get higher numbers numerically, historically, because this spring was so freaking crazy on the top, like the very top. Right? I mean, it was already crazy, but then the spring was just like, the Fed absolutely had to step in. It was not going in a good direction.
Agreed. Very, very cool. Anything else you want to talk about inventory? You're giving this away on Fortune later today. People need to check this out.
Yeah. You go look, readers go take a look and see what you're seeing in the data. And in terms of your market, I think the nice thing about this visual is not that it can tell you the whole story, but it also, if you know your market well, you can easily compare yourself to the rest of the country and get a feel for where you kind of fit into things.
Absolutely. Lance, thank you so much.